I want to welcome you to the last segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show of the year 2013. Today is Tuesday, December 31st, 2013. And I want to start off by first wishing everybody a happy and prosperous 2014, a happy and prosperous new year. This segment is going to touch on what I spoke about last night, which was my disagreement with the Jets bringing back Rex Ryan. But I'm going to come from a little bit of a different angle, and then after that, I'm going to leave it alone, and then I'm going to start focusing on what the Jets must do moving forward, if they're going to be successful moving forward, in my opinion. But before I get to that, I want to compare him to another coach. And it might seem unfair because the circumstances are similar, but then yet there is a slight difference, and I'm going to get to that difference. But let me just get started with that. I want to compare him to a young coach who came into the league by the name of Jim Harbaugh, who's the coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, why am I going to compare him to Jim Harbaugh? Because he took over a similar situation. A team that was very talented defensively, that had a lot of good talent defensively, okay, from in a previous administration. They had a running game with Frank Gore, and they had a caretaker at the quarterback position in Alex Smith. Now, the previous guys in Mike Singletary, Mike Nolan, who took over, who were the previous coaches of that team, did not have success, particularly with Alex Smith. Alex Smith struggled under Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary, two defensive-minded head coaches. Now, Jim Harbaugh is a quarterback. He was a quarterback during his playing days in the NFL. So, by hiring Jim Harbaugh has the knowledge of how a quarterback thinks. Because Jim Harbaugh was a mediocre quarterback during his playing days. He was a mediocre quarterback during his playing days. Okay? Now, this is not about Jim Harbaugh during his playing days. This is about Jim Harbaugh, the head coach. When he took over the 49ers, everybody thought he took over one of the worst situations in football. Because they said, oh, you don't have a quarterback you can win with. The previous administrations couldn't win. Previous two administrations couldn't win. Oh, he'd be lucky if he can get 8 to 10 victories out of that team. Well, lo and behold, the first year, what he did was, during the offseason, that was during the strike year of 2011, he got together with Alex Smith, and he remade Alex Smith mentally. He said, he came out and he says, look, I believe in Alex Smith. Now, whether he really did or didn't is not the point. The point is, that's what he sold to Alex Smith. You're my guy. Okay? That's what he sold to Alex Smith. But then what he did during that draft is he drafted a young guy out of Nevada by the name of Colin Kaepernick. Now, let's not worry about Colin Kaepernick as of right now. Let's just focus on Alex Smith. Because he drafted Colin Kaepernick in the second round. And Colin Kaepernick was not scheduled to play ahead of Alex Smith. So right now, don't focus on Colin Kaepernick. Let's just focus on the timeline here with Alex Smith. So what Jim Harbaugh did was he boosted the confidence of Alex Smith. And what he did is he turned Alex Smith from a turnover-prone quarterback who was causing the team to lose games to all of a sudden a mistake-free quarterback. Because Jim Harbaugh relied on his defense and his running game, ground and pound, to get his team through the season. And lo and behold, they won like about 12, 13 games that season, that following season. And they actually got to the NFC Championship game, where they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions in the New York Football Giants. Now, why is this important? Because that game, more than anything else, that NFC Championship game, showed the limitations of Alex Smith. Alex Smith was a caretaker that season, and a very good one, a game manager. And because everything broke right, the defense played well. The running game was very well. He was able to parlay that into the NFC Championship game. But what happened was what the Giants did is they took away the running game. They said, look, you ain't going to beat us. You're going to have to beat us through the air. That was the 49ers. That was the 49ers' weakness. So what happened was he could not throw the ball in the air. So all the Giants did was outwait the 49ers, wait for them to make a couple of mistakes, and boom, the Giants went on to the Super Bowl, and the rest is history. But the 49ers actually should have been there because the 49ers was really the better team. But that's when I believe Jim Harbaugh saw the limitations of Alex Smith. Alex Smith, the game manager, can take you but so far. And in the NFL, you can win games with Alex Smith. But if you're going to talk about getting to and winning a Super Bowl, you're going to need somebody who's a little bit more of a game manager than Alex Smith. Now let's transpose this over to the New York Football Jets. Okay? And why this is relevant. Now, the Jets had a game manager in Mark Sanchez. And Rex Ryan parlayed that to 2 AFC Championship games in the first couple of years. But here's where now where the two vastly veer off. They split. Jim Harbaugh and Rex Ryan. And this is why Jim Harbaugh is known as like the second best coach in the NFL, or one of the top 3-4 coaches in the NFL. And Rex Ryan is still establishing himself. Jim Harbaugh saw the limitations of his quarterback, and he decided, let me go with Colin Kaepernick the next year. But he didn't start off with Colin Kaepernick. He started off with Alex Smith. And Alex Smith played about 4 or 5 games and then had a concussion. Okay? Notice I'm putting those in quotes. Because, see, in the NFL, there's usually a rule that you don't lose your job due to injuries, but that rule went out the window a long time ago. But there's generally that rule. You don't lose your job due to injuries. Okay? So, they played Kaepernick. Kaepernick played a couple of good games. And then all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh made the controversial decision. He named Colin Kaepernick the starter. Whoa! Over Alex Smith, who just took you to the NFC Championship game the year before and was playing well up until his injury. But Jim Harbaugh rolled the dice. Jim Harbaugh didn't listen to the media because the media was against the move and they derided the move, and people even predicted Jim Harbaugh was going to fail because of it. But Jim Harbaugh didn't care what the media thought. Jim Harbaugh did what he thought was best for his team if he wanted to win. So he went with the Colin Kaepernick, the guy who was raw, but who had a lot of upside potential and was not afraid to make mistakes. Where Alex Smith, don't make the mistakes. Alex Smith was limited also. He doesn't have the arm Colin Kaepernick does. He doesn't have the accuracy Colin Kaepernick does. And then Colin Kaepernick also brought something to the game that Alex Smith doesn't. Alex Smith is mobile. Alex Smith can run. But he doesn't scare people with his running ability. But he can run. Colin Kaepernick, he's like the freaking road runner. Beep, beep. And he's like a gazelle. Can just get down the field like within 10, 15 seconds, he can be in the end zone from 60, 70 yards away. That's just how Colin Kaepernick is. I mean, he doesn't look fast, but he's deceptively fast. So he has more mobility, a better arm, better accuracy, better completion percentage. He throws the football down the field more than Alex Smith, where Alex Smith more or less checks the ball down a lot. That's why Alex Smith has a high completion percentage when he was with San Francisco. So Jim Harbaugh chose to roll the dice. Jim Harbaugh did something that, let's put it this way, only 2 or 3 coaches in this league would have done. And I can assure you Rex wasn't one of them. This is why Jim Harbaugh is Jim Harbaugh and Rex Ryan is Rex Ryan. Now, to be fair, Jim Harbaugh inherited Alex Smith, while the Jets drafted, Rex Ryan and them drafted Mark Sanchez. But here's where my issue lies here with this. It wasn't that you drafted Mark Sanchez. All right, you made the mistake. That happens. Hey, you mess up. You pick the wrong player in the draft. That does happen. So that's not the problem. The problem is when you're too stubborn to admit when you made a mistake. Because the problem here in New York was that Rex Ryan was accused in the locker room by the players of coddling Mark Sanchez. Okay? Mark Sanchez, the first 2 seasons, got the team to the AFC Championship game. But they did it primarily on the run game. They relied on their run game and their defense, ground and pound, which is what Rex Ryan wanted and wants. But you see, this is where he's different than Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh only used the ground and pound because that was the talent he had at that moment. But he upgraded the talent by drafting a more dynamic quarterback. But the Jets didn't have that plan. Because the Jets could have drafted Colin Kaepernick in 2011. But they chose not to. Because why? They believed in Mark Sanchez. After Sanchez only showed you when he tried to put the ball in the air, he did not have success. When they asked him to get away from the ground and pound, Sanchez failed. Sanchez looked bad. But when he had his best success when they were a ground and pound team. So in 2011, the Jets had a chance to draft Colin Kaepernick, but they bypassed on him because why? Rex Ryan believed in Mark Sanchez. And that's the difference in head coaches. I'm looking for a Jim Harbaugh, a risk taker. I'm not looking for a coach who wants to play it safe. And that's unfortunately what the Jets have. They have a coach who wants to play it safe. He only can coach well, if he has a ground and pound team. Because that's what Rex Ryan believes in, and that's what he does well. But that's okay. That's his little niche. But I don't think it's best for New York. That's just my opinion. That's why I'm not in favor of Rex Ryan. Or one of the biggest reason I'm not in favor of Rex Ryan, folks. Okay? Just look at the difference between Jim Harbaugh and Rex Ryan. Jim Harbaugh realizes when he doesn't have the talent, and he goes out and he gets it. Rex Ryan, stubbornly, oh no, I dropped this guy, I believe in him, I'm riding or dying with him. That term that they use in the streets, ride or die. When you should give up and realize, hey, you know what, there are better options out there. because Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson were out there and they were available. And this wasn't a year later after Sanchez got drafted. This was about 2, 3, 4 years later. These guys were available in the draft, and you chose not to draft them because of your belief in Mark Sanchez. That's why when they when they signed John Izek as the GM, they more or less made him the one, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but from my understanding, he's supposed to be the one who now has the say in player personnel, and then that's when he went and got Geno Smith, which Rex Ryan was not in agreement with. That was not a Rex Ryan pick. Okay? That was not a Rex Ryan pick. And if Mark Sanchez didn't get hurt in that preseason game against the Giants, which was the final preseason game against the Giants, which Mark Sanchez should not have been in there, except that the GM pretty much ordered him to, and everybody in New York knows this, the GM ordered him in that game, in that fourth quarter, where you had a whole bunch of guys who was going to be out on the streets at the next day. And Mark Sanchez ended up tearing his labrum or tearing his whatever. And he basically was out for the season. And how do I know that that was a John Izek move and not a Rex Ryan? Though Rex Ryan could sit there and say what he wants, it was not a it was not a Rex Ryan move, it was a John Izek move. How do I know this? Because the reports had that after the game, there was a screaming match between Mark Sanchez and John Izek. Now, why would he be screaming at the GM? Shouldn't he be screaming at the head coach? If it was the head coach's decision? So, if Mark Sanchez didn't get hurt, you would not have saw Geno Smith this year. You would have saw Mark Sanchez, because in Rex Ryan's eyes, Mark Sanchez gives him the best chance to win. And this is why Rex Ryan, to me, falls short as a head coach in today's NFL. Now, he might have been the right head coach 13 years ago, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, he'd be perfect. Because back then, ground and pound still won, a la Baltimore Ravens, a la the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Though the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a little bit more balance than ground and pound. They weren't a true ground and pound, but they leaned a lot on the run. But the Baltimore Ravens, they basically asked Trent Dilfer, which Rex Ryan was on that staff, by the way. They pretty much asked Trent Dilfer, don't make any mistakes. Don't just make a couple of throws and that was it. And maybe that's what influenced, or that helped shape Rex Ryan's opinions and decision making. But remember, his daddy, okay, is the Ryan, okay, Buddy Ryan, his daddy, believed in running the football, playing good defense. He didn't really care too much for quarterbacks. His daddy never developed a quarterback, and guess what? Neither has Rex. And to me, that's on the fault of the head coach. I'm sorry. It's just what it is. Now, let's move on from that, because it is what it is. The damage has been done. Rex Ryan will be back next year. Now, what must the Jets do to succeed moving forward? Here's my suggestions. Number one, Geno Smith has showed this year that he is very much capable. He can get the job done. But, see, to me, it was hard to really judge him this year because the weapons they had around him was really very inadequate. Guys were in and out of the lineup. He never really had a steady stream of receivers or reliable receivers he could throw to. When Jeremy Curley is your best receiver, you have an issue. Now, why did I mention Jeremy Curley and not, say, Santonio Holmes? Because out of 16 games, Santonio Holmes may have played in only about 4 or 5 of them. He was often injured. He just was injured. So he really didn't play in enough games to be impactful or to really help Geno Smith's development. Because Santonio Holmes is really their best receiver. But you want to know, speaking of that, let me digress for a second. A couple of years ago, Antonio Cromartie, who was the cornerback of the New York Jets, said, and I quote, I am, not I would be. I am the second best receiver on this team. Now, when you hear a defensive back say something like that, that is the biggest indictment of your offense, by the way. He said that 2 seasons ago. That's one of the biggest indictments. And guess who picked the players? Rex Ryan. But let's get off of that. But getting back to moving forward, I had just forgot that, and that's why I wanted to bring that in there, because that was very important. Because Antonio Cromartie was correct. He was the second best receiver on that team. But anyway, this year's Jeremy Curley was really your most reliable receiver, and even he was hurt a good portion of the season. So, I mean, and Jeremy Curley is nobody special. So, I mean, Geno Smith didn't have good weapons to throw to. That has to change moving forward. The Jets, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, they need a top-flight wide receiver, a number 1 wide receiver. They need a slot receiver, a Victor Cruz-type receiver. Now, Curley might fit that bill, but I need another one. Okay? You also need a tight end, a top-flight tight end. Now, as far as the receivers is concerned, I believe that can be handled because from what I hear, the Jets have about $30-40 million to spend this offseason. There's $30-40 million underneath the cap. That's good. So that means I would not use my draft picks to address the wide receiver positions per se. Here's what I would do. There are 2 guys out there that's available that would be number 1 receivers. That are number 1 receivers. And I'm going to give you the name of the 2 guys right now. One is Kenny Britt out of Tennessee. From the Tennessee Titans. He basically worn out his welcome there. They're ready to let him go and move on. Now, he is a head case, but he is a true number 1 receiver. When he's right, he's right. But he's a head case. But Rex Ryan loves those projects. Okay, well, I'm going to give you that opportunity. I would look at a Kenny Britt. Now, there's another guy where if you feel that Kenny Britt might not be the best guy in your locker room, and you don't want to upset chemistry or risk chemistry, there's another guy you can bring in. Now, he's very good. I don't think he's as good as Kenny Britt, but he's still the number 1 receiver. And he plays in the same building that the Jets played in. And that's Akeem Nicks. Now, here's my problem with Akeem Nicks. He basically took the year off this year because he wants a big contract. He wants a big contract. So he pretty much took the year off this year. He wasn't really hurt. At least that's not what was reported. So the man scored 0 touchdowns this year. I mean, how could you not score? I mean, even bums can get a touchdown. But for some reason, he just decided he wanted to take the year off. To me, he would have been better off literally taking the year off than to do it the way he did it. But he chose to do it the way he did it. Hey, but those are 2 guys that are immediately available. So you cannot say there are no quality or top-flight wide receivers in this year's free agency class. There is. There are 2. Now, neither one are Larry Fitzgerald, neither one are Calvin Johnsons, neither one are Andre Johnson. Those are the guys that I would really want. But they would fit the bill. Now, unless you feel like you can draft one and where the Jets is drafting, you're going to have a hard time finding one of those. Calvin Johnson, Larry Johnson. Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Andre Johnson. You're gonna have a hard time finding them because congratulations, Jets, you went 8-8. This is why I don't like 8-8. Because it's hard to get the right kind of unless you got a GM who's like an Ozzie Newsome, which I cannot say that John Izek is that because we don't even know. This is only going to be his second year in the draft, drafting the players for the Jets. So unless you got an Ozzie Newsome as your GM, because to me, Ozzie Newsome is the best GM in the business today. I would take him over any other GM in the game today. Jerry Reese, I'll take him over anybody because the man knows talent and he knows how to put together a team, a winning team. You don't do what Baltimore did and then tell me that this man can't put together. Come on. Baltimore made the playoffs the last 5 seasons. Do you realize how difficult that is? Only the New England Patriots can make a claim to doing better. Think about that. Only the New England Patriots can make a claim to have actually been better than that. But his teams have always been competitive. So unless I have an Ozzie Newsome as my GM, I don't feel confident with my GM drafting in the middle of the draft. Because you know why? It's too easy to get the picks wrong. It's too easy. Usually when you're at the top of the draft, it usually works itself out. You pretty much know who to pick. You pretty much know who to pick because it just works itself out. But in the middle of the draft, there could be about 10 guys available, and you got to choose the right one. You got to get it right. Because if you get it wrong, it sets you back. And when I mean the middle of the draft, I mean middle of the first round. They'll be middle of the second round. They got a lot of draft picks, but they're going to be in the middle of the rounds. They're not going to be in the top half or the top part of the draft. And that's where I wanted the Jets at this year, to be really honest with you. That's why once they were 5-4, and my friend asked me, well, do you want them to continue losing? I said, well, now that you don't win 5 games, go out there and keep winning because you got a chance at the playoffs. So at least make the playoffs. Because if you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. That's what I said to my friend. At least make the playoffs now. Now that you don't win out and won 5 games, go and make the playoffs. And they were in great position to do it. All they had to do was just keep winning. But they couldn't even do that. But anyway, so I would go and get a number 1 receiver, another slot receiver, another very good opposite receiver. I would go and get me try to get me a top flight tight end. Now you might have to address that in the draft. The top flight tight end. You could strengthen your offensive line. I would add another running back. Because you kind of got away with your running backs with Chris Ivory and Bilal Powell this year. I don't know if you can do that again next year. But I would add another running back. But I would not spend the top part of the draft to do it because you can find running backs late in the draft. Running backs have kind of really been devalued in today's NFL. And it's sad, but here's the funny thing. There are 4 top-tier teams in the NFL. In today's NFL, if you want to call it top tier. Seattle, San Francisco, Carolina, because these are 3 teams with the best records. Well, San Francisco, Seattle, Carolina, and we're going to go the AFC with Denver. Notice what those 4 teams have in common. Balanced attacks. They can run and they can pass the ball. They do rely more on the run than a lot of other teams. A lot of other teams is more of a pass-oriented team. And the Eagles, but the Eagles are not up there record-wise. But the Eagles also rely a lot on the run. That's what made the Eagles successful this year. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. So it seems like the running game is becoming like a renaissance back in the NFL again. And that's actually a good thing. But ground and pound, there's a difference between balanced attack and ground and pound, folks. There's a big difference. Ground and pound, you might succeed with that 1 year, but it's hard to consistently win that way because a lot of things got to go right. Ask Leslie Frazier. You know what Leslie Frazier said as he walked out the door? And remember, his team was ground and pound. Okay? When you got Adrian Peterson, you just more or less just turn around and give the ball to Adrian Peterson. They were ground and pound. You know what Leslie Frazier said when he walked out the door? If you don't have a quality quarterback in this league, you can't win. Whoa, what happened to your ground and pound? Well, it worked last year. It didn't work this year. Now, all of a sudden, Leslie Frazier goes from being a good coach to a bum. The man's not a bum. The problem is he never had a good quarterback. But my problem is he should have said something earlier. You should have complained earlier. I need a quarterback. I would have put the heat on the GM. Give me a quarterback. But when you are an African-American head coach, especially when, you don't get but so many opportunities, you got to be very careful how you do things. But I'm sorry. Sometimes you got to take a shot because you want to know why? Your credibility is on the line. Now, I would not touch getting back to the Jets, I would not touch that defense. I would leave the defense as it is. You might still can add some pieces, and I'd use the draft, the latter part of the draft to do that. Okay? But don't make too much changes. Don't do much changes because your defense is your strongest unit. And it's the unit that actually kept you in a lot of games. So your defense is still pretty good. As you see, and you got a front four. You finally got a front four worth something. You know what I'm saying? Because Rex was searching for that for a long time, and he couldn't get it. But he finally got it now. A front four worthy of something, who can actually get after the quarterback a bit. But you can still use a defensive end, somebody who, can just get to the quarterback. That's what he do best. You can still use that, but you got a pretty good up front four. Okay? To me, if the Jets can do that, and the Jets can stay away from the tendency of trying to ground and pound, the Jets can actually win some games next year. At least you'll put the onus on Geno Smith to find out if he is a franchise caliber quarterback. At least you can put the onus on Geno Smith to find out if he's a franchise caliber quarterback. Okay? This is what you want to find out. You need to find that out. But you couldn't do that with the chicken scratch that he was throwing to this year. But next year, if you put the right talent in, then that will tell me if you got something. And I think Geno Smith is a franchise caliber quarterback. Maybe is he going to be elite level? That remains to be seen. I can't go there, but this man can play the game. He has shown flashes that he can play this game. Okay? To me, he's better than Christian Ponder. Hell, he's a lot better than Blaine Gabbert or Jake Locker, in my opinion. This guy can play this game. But to me, this is what the prescription I just gave you is what the Jets need to do moving forward if they want to win. And then we'll see just how good of a coach Rex Ryan really is. I want to thank you for watching the final segment of 2013 of the Jermaine Brown Show in 2013, the final segment. I want to thank you for watching it. And again, I wish each and every one of you and your families a happy and prosperous 2014. Thank you.